this up, and this one is going to be the bright field lighting, and on the other side we're going to set up for dark field lighting for glass. And that's what we're going to do. Now, these, you know, they're somewhat clean. I obviously didn't clean them up completely. But you don't want your glass to go a lot of depth here. And I probably want to pull it a little further away from there, which I probably should have done before I had that. So let's see how well I can do this, because if I mess it up, we'll have it recorded. Okay, good. These things are expensive. All right. So about this distance away, you want to have them there. And what I'm going to do is go in here and focus on them. And make sure that I only have the light from the softbox on them. So I'm not going to let the outside, I'm not going to see the outside of my softbox. So in this case, I want to go a little bit higher for vertical. And I think in this case, I'm going to go ahead and put it on, if it will, and I'll have to adjust that. So like I told you before, I shoot all on manual in the studio, and so that's what I'm on right now. And when you go to live view, you have to adjust so that it can see it. If your setting is too dark, you're not going to be able to see it in live view. It'll just be black on the back here. So you do have to make some adjustments. So let's just get this here roughly. And you also have a focusing button in the back there. It's a plus and minus, and you can move your square around so that you can get critical focus on something. So that's what I'm doing right now, is I'm adjusting that focus so that I can get critical focus on the glass here. All right. So I don't know what the setting is, but I'm just going to take a shot and see what we get. And nothing, because that didn't go off. So I think I can't use, I may not be able to. Is this on, Stephen? Yes, there it is. Okay, so I can't use, so for focusing, I can use live view, but we can't use live view with this because it won't set it off. So we have to close it down and basically look through here to see it. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit more if I can. I gotta get a little bit closer. So what I'm trying to do here is I'm framing it up so that I have all the black is on the bottom there, because I want that to reflect the glass. So I have that now. It's really, really bright. Now I can do two things here to adjust my lighting. I can adjust it down on here, and let me see how low this is at right now. So I can go a little bit lower on this one. I can also, now what is it that we use to adjust the lighting on flash? Do we use the f-stop or shutter speed? Either one? Wrong. Which one?
Shutter speed?
Wrong. All right, so they weeded it out for you. All right, yes. We use the f-stop only. The shutter speed makes no difference in here. All we want to do is make sure, remember I said that we needed the flash sync speed to be below whatever it is. So, well, let me get it exposed correctly, and then we'll go over that. I'll show you a difference. So on this one here, I can actually bring this down some, and I brought the light down quite a bit on that, and let's see how it exposes here for this picture here. So that's a little bit better. I like that picture. It's getting close, but I think that I do have to set it down a little bit more because it is pretty blown out. But it actually looks really good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to increase my f-stop now, because I did that. I adjusted it. The light is all the way down. Yeah, let's see. So I'm using my old camera, so I got to remember what to do with it. So I want it about a 60th and 10th. And let's see what that looks like. Okay, that looks much better. I like that one. All right, so unfortunately, you're not going to be able to see that all the time. But what I did here is I'm just adjusting these here. I lowered this down to its lowest, so you can see that by the flash, like when I'm going to hit it right now. You can see that it's not much of a flash, it's just a very small amount. Now on the camera, I talked about the flash sync speed. Right now, this one is at, I think, a 30th of a second, a 60th of a second. So I think this one has a flash sync speed of 2/50th of a second. So anything below that, it'll be fine. Now, if I bring it up to a faster shutter speed, let me go to like 400. So what I'd like for you guys to do is come here and go ahead and look at this if you can. Well, I'll show it in class later on. I think that'll probably be easier. But what happens is, those of you that can't see it, you see that there's half is darkened out. So what happened there is that the shutter opened up and it has these two curtains that are going by. Well, these curtains, instead of being wide open now, they're half closed like that. So they actually slide by like this. Well, when the flash goes off, they're like at this point, and so it only lights up half of the picture there. So that's when you know that you're past your flash sync speed. So I'm going to bring that back down to, let's see if 200 is my flash sync speed on this. Yeah, 200 works. So now, what would be the advantage of using my fastest sync speed in a room like this? Can anybody think of an advantage? No? Chickens, now you're all afraid. See, now you're all afraid. So the reason that we use the fastest shutter speed possible is that if there's any movement, it would help, but the flash is actually what is your shutter speed. Right now, my shutter speed is right around 1/10,000th of a second, because this flash is relatively low, so it's a very quick burst of light. I mean, a really, really fast burst of light. So whatever this is that's what your effective shutter speed is on the camera, because that's all that's lighting up. Your camera might open up for 1/200th of a second, but only 1/10,000th of a second that light hits it, and that's all it exposes. Now, the advantage of using a faster shutter speed in here is that the ambient light is not going to affect it. We can leave the lights on, I can shoot with the lights on, and we don't have to worry about that affecting it at all, because I have a faster shutter speed. So right now, if I took a picture without this on, everything would just be pitch black. It wouldn't make an exposure. So the advantage of using that, now let's say if I used a 1 second exposure, it would still make the picture, but then what's going to happen is that the ambient light is going to start affecting this. So if you look on here, some of you can see like light reflection on these from the lights above. That's what's going to happen when if I slow it down. Well, let's slow it down and see if I'm telling you the truth. I could be just lying to you, But let's go down to a second here, and so now if you look at it, you can see, and we'll show it in there. We may be able to see, we may not, because it is on a white background, but we'll definitely see it when we do the dark background. You're going to see some of these light reflections here that we don't have before, because before the only thing that was lighting up was this backlight here. So you remember that when we did the lecture, and I'm just going to bring my shutter speed back up. Now you see that, I shot at 1 second there, and I'm shooting at 1/250th of a second. It's not making any difference on the exposure. The exposure is almost identical. The only difference that happens is that the ambient light starts affecting it. If I go really slow, then it will start affecting the exposure completely. So this is the way that you do lighting on these if you want the white background. And this becomes, although this looks rather, does this look yellow to everybody else too? Yeah, because they're rather yellow. But when the flash goes off, it's bright enough exposure to make it white, and it goes through that. And we have really good definitions on the lines around the bottle. So let me make sure that we have it all the way around. And we do. We do have good lining around there. Now, the other thing is, what did I do with that black? Didn't I have a black piece of cardboard I took someplace? I think it was this one. Yeah. So the other thing you can do, whoops, I should say that while I'm in front of the camera and not behind it. All of a sudden, you see on YouTube, there's just this picture of all this and somebody's talking and he's not even there. So what you can do is you can bring this in, and by bringing this in close to it, and when you can actually put black on both sides, is that it's going to start darkening up the edges even more on these lights, so to be more of a defined line. So let's say you took the picture and you had this line going down here and it disappeared right in this area right here. You could actually bring this in and bring that line back in, because it's going to darken it up. So, and if you'd come here and just hold that right there for me. There you go. And so a little bit closer, good, right there. So now when you take the shot, if we compare it, and we'll compare it later on when all of you can look at it, thank you. We'll have a darker line on this side here and on this one here. And we can actually add, we don't have two cards here, we'll cut you another one. We can actually add two cards on each side, and that's going to darken both sides of this. And also, it sort of darkens this side on the inside a little bit too, but not as much as it will affect the outside. And it will darken both sides here. So it will give you a very well-defined line on there for your glass. Now, the idea of this, when you take the picture of the glass against the white background, is that the light comes through, it's all white. The light can't go through this thick of glass, because, you know, on the side, the glass is much thicker than it is here. So as it wraps around, it blocks more and more of the light and creates a dark area there. And that's the line that we want to see on the bottles, and that's what outlines all of our bottles. Now, in this case, you can read all of these lines on these gradients here, so you can see everything on there, and that looks actually pretty good. So I think I'm going to take another exposure. And right now I'm at F10. I'm going to move it up to, let me bring this back down here. I'm going to go F16 and take a shot with it. And we can see that's a little bit dark. It's going to get a little bit darker. I can see it's a little bit darker. You guys are going to just have to believe me. And then I'm going to come back to 5.6 and take a shot there. And the edges of my lines are a little bit less defined here. Now, this particular one here has a very solid, sharp line here that you can see, and I'm willing to bet it's because you're reflecting off it on your black right there, right there. And it could actually even be your shirt right there. But one of the shirts are reflecting, so you'll see in the picture that we're going to see this right here. Now, when you're in here, you set this up. You want to adjust your light so that it comes through. You notice that I took no meter reading at all. You know, I just came in here and I shot and I looked on the back there, and I can look at my histogram and see how well it's exposed to the picture that I want. Now, your histogram is really going to be off on this picture because it's all white and because it's blowing out everything. So I let that go and I just look at the picture and make sure that the bottles look good and everything looks good, and I could see continuous lines on everything. But once you get it set up, I always would adjust this first, set whatever f-stop you want to use on that. And you really don't want a maximum depth of field, because if you start getting a maximum depth of field and this starts getting a little bit dark, you're going to see all these wrinkles in this right here. Right now it's just solid white because you blow out all the wrinkles here. As it starts getting darker and darker, you're going to start seeing those wrinkles there. Now, once you get it set up to the proper exposure, go ahead and shoot one above and one below. Okay, and then you're going to bracket that. So basically, you're just adjusting your f-stop. That's all you're doing. You leave the shutter speed alone, and you just adjust the f-stop. And you're going to go one above. So if I shot this at 5.6, I'd go to 4, and I'd go to 8 would be the next one. And so that's what I do on both those and bracket that. That make sense? Any questions? Thoughts, ideas, comments? No?
Remember you had said that we were going to set it to 125.
Yeah, you can set it to 125. Some of them have a 60th of a second. Different cameras have different flash sync speeds. The main thing is you can set your camera in here and take a shot, and you can keep moving the shutter up until all of a sudden you start seeing that dark line there on the edge, and then you know that you passed your flash sync speed. But your camera, in the manual, it's going to tell you what the flash sync speed is. Most of them today, like most digital cameras, are 1/25th to 2/50th of a second. If you shoot it at a 60th of a second, you're completely safe, because this is not moving, so you don't really have to worry about movement so much. Okay? But this is pretty, wouldn't you agree, this is pretty easy setup here? Now, if you didn't have the softbox back here, what you had to do is we'd have to bring down a white background. You have to set up a light on this side and a light on this side, and make sure that you have even lighting going across everything, and then shoot it that way. And that's how you'd have to do it. But that takes a lot more time than this. This is pretty much, get it done pretty quick. And because we're shooting small things, it's relatively easy to do. All right? Okay, so what we'll do is we'll move on. No, don't do that. What we'll do is we'll move on over to the other one. All right?
Question.
Yes?
In the video that you showed us last time, the guy said you needed something inside to keep from the hot spot.
Correct. Yeah. And what that is that's the baffle that's inside. See this right here? So there's two layers. There's two diffusers in here. And so this, you see how we can see the spot on that one? When you look at that, you can see that spot right there. So if you don't have that baffle there, you have a very hard light, because you have just a small element here that's going to hit this, and it's going to make a relatively sharp light around there. With this here, it's going to make a sharper light, and it's going to diffuse that onto this, because this whole thing lights up, and then by the time it hits this, it's all diffused, so it's even all the way around. Now, I think we still have some hot spot on there, because these are relatively old soft boxes. So you do get somewhat of a hot spot, but it's pretty even all the way across. And the nice thing about it is when you get done, it's basically just you can use a gradient filter to adjust it in Photoshop and get rid of that darkness on the edge so it's even all the way across. So that makes it relatively easy to do. But yes, so that's the baffles that we have in there. We had to hunt for those to make sure that you guys had them in there. So you always want to have that in there. And they all come with a baffle inside. Any other question? Good question. No? All right. So now we're going to go ahead and go over to the dark side.